When a congresswoman dares to call democracy Phase 4, you know things are not normal. A former president classified documents a FedEx box and a warning democracy is faltering. Melania is silent. Trump fires back. And Jasmine, she tells the truth everyone is trying to avoid hearing. Hey y'all, we're back at it, diving even deeper into this political hurricane with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett leading the charge against what she calls a lawless president and a criminal regime. I've already laid out her bombshell claims, the president's petty clapbacks, the polarized reactions in Washington and beyond, and the eerie silence from Melania. But there's so much more to unpack here. This ain't just a story about one woman's fight or one man's ego. It's a saga about the soul of our democracy. The weight of history and the ripple effects felt from small-town America to the global stage. So grab a coffee or whatever gets you through, because we're about to go on a 5,000-word journey through the layers of this mess. Let's do this. First, I want to take a step back and put Crockett's warnings into a historical lens, because if we don't learn from the past, we're doomed to repeat it right. When she talks about Stage 4 and democracy dying, it's not just hyperbole. She's drawing on real parallels to moments in history where unchecked power led to collapse. Think about the 1930s in Germany. Yeah, I know it's a heavy comparison, but hear me out. Crockett herself referenced the Enabling Act, a law that gave Hitler's regime the power to bypass democratic checks and balances. It wasn't an overnight takeover. It was a slow erosion. Laws ignored courts, undermined dissent, silenced. She's not saying we're there yet, but she's pointing to the playbook. When a leader starts acting like the law doesn't apply to them, when they defy court orders and mock the system, it's a slippery slope. And history shows us that slope can lead to a cliff real quick. I'm not saying we're headed for a dictatorship tomorrow, but Crockett's urging us to look at the warning signs. She's like, y'all, we've seen this movie before. Let's not wait for the credits to roll before we act. Now let's talk about some other historical moments closer to home. Remember Nixon and Watergate? That was a crisis of lawlessness too. A president caught in lies, cover-ups, and abuses of power. But here's the difference back then. There was a bipartisan push to hold him accountable. Congress, the press, even folks in his own party said enough is enough. Nixon resigned before he could be impeached and the system bruised as it was held. Fast forward to today, and Crockett's arguing we don't have that same unity. The partisan divide is so deep that half the country seems ready to excuse anything if it's their guy doing it. She's brought up Watergate in interviews saying, if Nixon pulled what this president's pulling now, he'd have been gone in a heartbeat. But today, we've normalized the abnormal. And she's got a point. When you've got a leader openly defying gag orders, ignoring Congress, and still packing rallies with cheering crowds, it's a different ballgame. The question is, can our institutions withstand this kind of pressure when loyalty trumps principle? Speaking of institutions, let's zoom in on the legal battles, because that's where Crockett's predictions are being tested in real time. She's been hammering on the stolen documents case as the one that could kill this president legally. And y'all, the updates are coming in hot. Prosecutors have been building an airtight case evidence of classified materials, mishandled lies to investigators' subpoenas dodged for over a year. Legal analysts I've talked to say this ain't just a paperwork issue. It's a national security risk. Crockett's been vocal about the details, pointing out how he allegedly got his lawyers to lie for him, how he treated top-secret files like souvenirs. Her quip about FedExing them to Putin. It's dark humor, but it lands when you realize how close some of this info could have gotten to hostile hands. The latest court filings show the prosecution pushing for a trial date ASAP while the defense is stalling with every trick in the book. Crockett's been on social media saying delay ain't gonna save him. The truth's coming. But here's the rub, will a conviction, if it happens, actually change anything? Or will it just deepen the divide with his base calling it a witch hunt? And that ain't the only legal front. There's the hush money trial where he's already under a gag order he can't seem to respect. Just last week he posted another rant on social media attacking the judge and witnesses in ways that skirt the line of violation. Crockett called it textbook bullying, and she's predicting he'll cross that line soon enough. Legal experts agree he's playing with fire, and a judge could slap him with fines or worse if he keeps it up. But here's what's wild. Even if he gets hit with penalties, his supporters are spinning it as proof he's a victim of a corrupt system. I saw a rally clip where folks were chanting, they can't silence him while waving flags. Crockett's response. He's silencing himself with every dumb post. The law's the law whether you've got 1 million followers or not. She's betting on the courts to hold firm, but she's also warning that if they don't, it's a green light for Stage 4 total defiance. And if a president can ignore the judiciary with no consequences, what's left of checks and balances? Now let's shift gears and look at how this is resonating beyond our borders, because this drama ain't just an American problem. International leaders and media are watching, and their reactions are telling. I've been following coverage from Europe, where allies like the UK and Germany are expressing concern not just about the president's behavior, but about what it means for global stability. A recent editorial in a major British paper called his actions a warning bell for democracies everywhere, echoing Crockett's fears of democratic erosion. They're worried that if the U.S., a supposed beacon of freedom, starts sliding toward authoritarianism, it emboldens strongmen elsewhere. Think about leaders in places like Hungary or Turkey who've already cracked down on dissent and undermined their own systems. Crockett's been retweeting some of this coverage saying, "The world sees it." Why don't we meanwhile adversaries like Russia and China are having a field day using state media to mock our dysfunctional democracy? It's propaganda, sure, but it stings when our own leaders give them the ammo. I reached out to a foreign policy expert who told me off the record that Crockett's warnings are being discussed in diplomatic circles. Allies are quietly asking, can we trust the U.S. to lead on democratic values when it's grappling with this at home? NATO partners are nervous about commitments. Will a president who defies his own laws honor international agreements? And don't even get started on trade or climate deals where trust is everything. Crockett's been vocal about this too, saying in a recent speech, "Our mess ain't just ours. It's a signal to the world that democracy's up for grabs if we don't fight for it." She's pushing for Congress to send a message through oversight through legislation that we're still a nation of laws. But with gridlock in D.C., that's easier said than done. The international lens just adds another layer of urgency to her fight, showing how high the stakes really are. Let's bring it back home now and talk about the grassroots. Because while the suits in Washington bicker, regular folks are mobilizing. Crockett's words have sparked a wave of activism, especially in communities that feel most at risk under this administration. I've been talking to organizers in Texas and beyond, and they're inspired by her fire. In Dallas, her district, there's a coalition of voter rights groups hosting workshops on how to push for accountability, everything from petition drives to protest marches. One activist told me Crockett's our megaphone. She's saying what we can't on the national stage, and we're amplifying it on the ground. They're focusing on issues like voter suppression, which they tie directly to her warnings about democracy dying. If laws are ignored at the top, they argue it trickles down to polling places being shuttered or ballots being tossed. It's real, and it's personal for a lot of folks who fought hard for their voice. But it ain't all unity and kumbaya. The grassroots response is just as divided as the national one. In conservative strongholds, there's pushback against Crockett's narrative through counter-protests and local campaigns. I saw a flyer for a Patriot rally in a small Texas town advertising a speaker who called her an enemy of freedom for attacking the president. These folks aren't just defending him, they're framing her as the threat, saying she's part of a radical left out to destroy American values. It's a mirror of the rhetoric coming from GOP leaders, and it's fueling local tensions. I talked to a pastor in one of these communities who said we're praying for unity, but her words are splitting us further apart. Crockett's response to this kind of criticism, she ain't backing down. At a recent event, she said, "I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to save what's left of our system, even if it ruffles feathers." That's the kind of resolve that's got her base fired up, but it's also why the divide keeps growing. And let's not forget the media's role in all this. The 24-hour news cycle is eating this up, with cable networks running non-stop segments on Crockett's claims versus the president's clapbacks. Some outlets are digging into her Stage 3, Stage 4 framework, bringing on legal experts to break down whether her warnings hold water. Others are focusing on the drama, hyping up the personal attacks and turning it into a soap opera. I've seen headlines ranging from Crockett sounds alarm on democracy's decline to Texas rep sparks controversy with criminal label. Social media's even worse. It's a battleground of memes, hot takes, and conspiracy theories. Some folks are sharing doctored videos to make Crockett look unhinged. Others are posting side-by-side clips of the president's rants to back her up. It's a mess, but it's also a mirror of how polarized we are. And through it all, Crockett's staying the course, using every platform she's got to keep the focus on the facts. Now let's get personal for a minute, because this story ain't just about policy or politics, it's about people. I mentioned earlier how Crockett's outspokenness comes at a cost even in her own life. She's been open about the strain it puts on relationships, the late-night arguments with family or friends who don't see eye to eye. Imagine being her going viral for calling the president a fascist, then coming home to a loved one who voted for him. That's the kind of tension most of us can't fathom, but she's living it. And she's not the only one. I've heard from staffers and activists close to her orbit who say the threats she's getting online and off are next level. We're talking death threats, hate mail, the works. She ain't letting it show, though. At a recent town hall, she shrugged it off, saying, "If I'm not getting hate, I'm not doing my job." That's guts, y'all. But it's also a reminder of the human toll this fight takes. And then there's Melania, still silent as ever. While Crockett's out here taking heat, the First Lady's absence is still the loudest unanswered question. She's been spotted in New York, far from the campaign trail, and sources say she's keeping a low profile on purpose. Is she distancing herself from the chaos? Is she dealing with her own private reckoning we don't know and the White House ain't talking? But every day she stays out of sight, the speculation grows. Some are saying she's done with the spotlight. Others think she's waiting for the right moment to speak. Either way, her silence is a stark contrast to Crockett's fire, and it's got people wondering what's really going on behind those gilded doors. So where do we go from here? Crockett's warnings about Stage 4, where laws are ignored, courts are defied, and democracy dies, ain't abstract anymore. With the president openly mocking the system and pushing every boundary we're seeing, her predictions play out in real time. She's still pushing for accountability, calling for investigations into the documents case and beyond. She's convinced that's the one that could bring him down, lying about classified files, defying subpoenas, getting lawyers to cover for him. Her quip about FedExing them to Putin. It's a joke, but it's also a gut punch when you realize how close to reality it feels. Legal experts I've talked to say she's not wrong to focus on this case. It's airtight, and the evidence is damning. But will it be enough to stop the slide she's warning about? That's the million-dollar question. Look, y'all, I've been in the game long enough to know that politics is messy and truth is often the first casualty. But what Jasmine Crockett is laying out ain't just noise. It's a roadmap of where we've been, where we are, and where we're headed if we don't course correct. She's citing court records, public statements, and hard evidence, not opinions, not guesses. She's asking us to look at the pattern, no empathy, no limits, no respect for the law. And she's begging the question, why are so many of us still looking away? Why are we letting personal loyalty or party lines blind us to what's right in front of us? I ain't got the answers, but I know we can't ignore the stakes. This ain't just about one congresswoman or one president. It's about whether we're going to stand up for the rule of law or let it crumble while we argue over who's the loudest in the room. So I'm turning it back to y'all. What do you make of this? Are you riding with Crockett, believing we're on the brink of a democratic collapse if we don't act? Or do you think she's overblowing it, and this is just politics as usual? Hit me with your thoughts, because this conversation is far from over. And if you're as hooked on this story as I am, stick around for more. We're diving into every angle, every update, every twist. Thanks for rolling with me on this one. Let's keep pushing for the truth, no matter how messy it gets. Now let's get into something we don't talk about enough, the psychological toll this whole saga is taking on the nation. Crockett's been blunt about the president's behavior, pointing to patterns that align with narcissistic and antisocial personality disorders, as she's said in interviews. She's not diagnosing him officially, but she's citing public actions, rants, lies, bullying that fit the bill. And y'all, it's not just about him. It's about what that does to us as a country. I've been reading up on studies from psychologists who say constant exposure to this kind of leadership, erratic, divisive, unaccountable, can mess with people's mental health. We're talking increased anxiety, distrust in institutions, even a sense of helplessness. I spoke to a therapist in Chicago who's seeing clients come in stressed out over the news cycle, saying, "It feels like there's no stability anymore." Crockett's warnings about Stage 4 hit harder when you think about that. If democracy feels like it's crumbling, so does our collective sense of safety. And it's not just adults feeling it. Teachers are telling me kids are picking up on this too, asking questions like, why does the president say mean things? Or, are we going to be okay? That's heavy, y'all. Crockett's talked about this in passing, mentioning how her own family feels the weight of her public fight. She said, "I'm doing this for the next generation, even when it keeps me up at night." But the flip side is her critics argue she's adding to the stress by fear-mongering. I saw a conservative commentator claim she's scaring people with talk of fascism when we've got bigger problems like inflation. It's a fair point to some, but Crockett counters that ignoring the root issue, lawlessness at the top, makes every other problem worse. It's a chicken and egg debate, but the mental strain on everyday Americans is undeniable. We're a nation on edge, and her words are either a wake-up call or a lightning rod, depending on who you ask. Let's circle back to Melania for a hot second, because her absence is still the elephant in the room. While Crockett's out here taking hits and the president's throwing punches, the First Lady's silence is deafening. Latest reports say she's been spotted at private events in New York, far from the political fray, but still no public statements. Insiders Anonymous, of course, hint she's distancing herself deliberately, maybe wrestling with her own feelings about the chaos. Crockett hasn't commented directly on Melania, but she's dropped subtle jabs about folks who stay quiet when they could speak up. It's not hard to read between the lines. Social media's buzzing with theories. Some say Melania's done with the drama, others think she's planning a comeback. But until she breaks her silence, it's all guesswork. What's clear, though, is that her stepping back while Crockett steps forward paints a stark contrast. Two women, two very different roles in this unfolding story. Now, as we wrap this segment, I want to zoom out and ask the big picture question. Crockett's been forcing us to face, what kind of country do we want to be? Her whole argument, stages 1 through 4, lawlessness, democracy on life support, boils down to a choice. Do we keep excusing behavior that chips away at our foundation just because it's wrapped in a flag or a catchy slogan? Or do we draw a line even if it's messy, even if it means hard conversations with neighbors or family? I've covered politics for years, and I've never seen a moment quite like this where the warnings are so dire, the evidence so public, and the divide so deep. Crockett's not just sounding an alarm. She's handing us a mirror. She's saying, look at what's happening, look at who we're becoming, and decide if that's who you want to be. I've laid out the history, the legal fights, the global stakes, the grassroots battles, and the emotional weight. But I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to lay it bare and let you wrestle with it. So where do you stand? Are you with Crockett, seeing a democracy in danger and a fight worth having? Or do you think this is overblown, just another chapter in a noisy political game? Hit me with your thoughts, because this story ain't close to done. We've got more twists, more battles, and more truth to chase. Stick with me, y'all, because we're in this together. Thanks for riding along. Let's keep pushing for clarity in the chaos.